You wanna go, you wanna leave. So baby, come and get away with me. You wanna go, you wanna leave.
So I want to talk to you today about looking wealthy and being wealthy. This is a very interesting subject right here. Looking wealthy and being wealthy. So we see many people driving around these nice cars, nice house, have $1,000 cell phones, have nice clothes, have this, have that, but does that really mean that they have money? I'm going to tell you guys today, 85% of the population lives from paycheck to paycheck. So what really happens here is they're enslaved to their job. If there's ever a big layoff at their job or anything like that, they get scared because most likely they're going to lose everything. And if not everything, a lot of things. They're going to lose maybe their car, their house, won't be able to pay their credit card bills, just everything in general. And it's so crazy because you could have a person that drives to work in a dumpy little car and just look and say, oh, this guy's poor. But that's not the truth. He might be the richest guy out there. Just he really knows how to manage his money properly. So this is a big deal in today's society, is we have everybody wanting to compete with each other. We have everybody living on credit and living on loans and stuff like that, and it's really crazy. You buy a $200,000 house, someone feels like they need to up you, and so they'll buy a $250,000 house. But in reality, by them going above and beyond and buying all this crazy stuff, they're actually putting themselves in bondage because they have all these high bills to pay. They have all these crazy loans. And, even if the normal work week is 40 hours, they're begging for overtime. And they need overtime, and they're mad if they don't get it. And it's because they put themselves so deep in these situations that if they don't get the overtime, they're not able to pay all these credit bills and car payments and just everything. And it's really crazy because today's whole society has fallen into this trap. And so no one could really live in peace and be free and live without worry, if you follow the system. And I'm going to explain to you guys, 85% of the population lives from paycheck to paycheck. And I don't live from paycheck to paycheck. Like I used to, but that was way back in 2007 maybe, when I was first getting started with the refinery and didn't really know much about finances and anything like that. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on finances or nothing, but I'm getting better over the years. And because when I started working through the refinery, I started learning about finances and everything like that. And as time kept going, I started to stop consuming so much. Or if I would consume, I would just consume things that would help me, like books, knowledge, stuff like that, and going after certificates, stuff, instead of buying materialistic stuff, like now you buy an Apple iPhone, and then they have an Apple iWatch. So instead of taking your phone out of your pocket to check it when someone's calling or messaging, you just have to look on your wrist. But it defeats the whole purpose, because why even have a phone? Why even have the watch, Why have a watch that tells time if your phone tells time? It just doesn't make sense. And even Android's come out with the phone. It's called a phone for your phone. And it's just just more junk. That's all it is. And so you could really have all this nice stuff. You could have all these nice materialistic things and still living from paycheck to paycheck. And this is crazy, because there's a guy at work that I talked to a few weeks back, and I'm really trying to explain to him finances and trying to tell him, some books to read that'll help him, but he was just not totally even He's all, oh yeah, 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 and he wasn't even open to listening to what I had to say. So he just pretty much disregarded me, and I'm just trying to help him out. You know, rich people are rich because they buy assets, and poor people are poor because they buy liabilities. And the difference between assets and liabilities is an asset. When you buy an asset, that's something that's going to bring in money, that's something going to make money, something that's of value. When a liability is just something that's materialistic. And so just to give you an example, so assets could be like a rental property, apartment complex, it could be Roth IRA, stocks and bonds, it could be investments in currencies or gold, silver, businesses, all those are examples of assets. Liabilities are pretty much a home is a liability. A home is a liability because assets bring in money while liabilities take out money. And what I'm trying to say is, so if I own a rental property and I'm renting it out, that money's coming in towards me. I'm not paying out every month to own that rental property. Whoever's renting the rental property pays the payments, and then if they pay more than what I'm asking for, that goes straight into my bank account. That's extra income on top of my payments. So like right now I own a rental property, and I've owned a couple in the past, and I think that they're good investments if you know how to manage them properly and stuff like that. So those are bringing in money. Those people that are staying in my properties, they're paying my monthly payment for me. I don't even have to pay that monthly payment. So that's still one of my assets. I don't own it yet till it's completely paid off, but if you understand what I'm really talking about here, where poor people, they're too confused with consumerism. They buy stuff that brings them in no money, like an Apple iPhone. All that does is allow you to get on social media, text your friends, communicate, stuff like that, and that's valuable to a certain extent, but you could be using these devices and stuff to actually make money, on top of that. Or they just buy a TV. Well, TV's for enjoyment purposes. That's not making you no money. You're just watching entertainment shows on there, and that's all you're really doing with that TV. If you buy fans, like you buy a Dyson vacuum, yeah, it sure does clean good, but all it does is vacuum your floor. It's not bringing in any extra money. So what's the real purpose of going after and buying all this stuff? Just like pants, you could go to JCPenney's and buy a nice pair of pants for 20, 25, 30 bucks. Or you could go down to the Buckle and buy a pair of pants for $105, $120. And they're the same pants. It's just one has a name on it and one doesn't. One has a little bit better stitching and one doesn't. But what's the real purpose behind it all? Are we trying to keep up with everybody else and what they buy? That's one reason why poor people stay poor and rich people stay rich. Rich people are always buying assets. And poor people are always buying liabilities, stuff that makes them no money. Just like poor people will go out and buy pictures to put all around their house. And it's just like, okay, you just wasted hundreds of dollars on these pictures. What's the point? Where a rich person will go and invest hundreds of dollars in a company, or in a stock, in a bond, or save up some money and buy another rental property or whatever, put a garage on the rental property so to increase its value. This is what rich people are doing, and this is what we're all caught up in nowadays, and this is why we're poor. It's because we have the mentality of buying liabilities. And one thing I'm trying to explain here is there's a book I read in the past that really explained this to me. Like I said, I stopped living from paycheck to paycheck in like 2007, and I've been learning over the years about money and finances. But I read a book in 2015 called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I'll put the link to it in the description below in case you guys want to check it out. And it's a cheap book, it's like $5 or something. But I guarantee you, if you read this book, your outlook on everything will change. On whatever you buy, it'll change. Like me, I read it and I was just like totally like, man, I can't believe I didn't even know. I was totally blind to all this stuff. And it helped me out so much with my finances, just learning what liabilities and assets were. And he explains a lot in that book. And that's why it's called Rich Dad and Poor Dad. It's not really about being born into a rich family or being born into a poor family. It's the way you think and the things you buy and the actions you take in life, that's going to make you who you are. Because you could be born into a rich family and they could give you an inheritance and your parents could die or whatever, and you could totally squander that inheritance away on meaningless consumer items like buying a whole bunch of liabilities just because you're not smart, you're not educated on the subject. Or you could be a poor person, and grow up poor and end up wealthy when you're old just because you know about liabilities and assets and you educated yourself, you took the time to read books, stuff like that. And so that's what I want to really dig into, you guys. I don't want anybody to be poor, suffering and stuff like that. You really need to take a step back and look at what you're buying. Are you buying liabilities or are you buying assets? What is it? Just because you drive around in nice cars and stuff like that doesn't mean you're rich. It means you're in debt. That's what it really means. Unless you have a lot of assets on the backside and your assets have already paid off all that stuff. But there becomes a point in time where enough is enough. You can only have so much materialistic stuff, and then you're hoarding all this stuff. And it's like, you really got to think, what do I really need in life? What do I ultimately need? Do I just need a nice few things, or do I need tons of nice things? Apple watches, Apple computers, Apple TVs, everything, all these expensive clothes. When clothes, they're gonna wear out and you're end up gonna throw them in the trash and going to buy another pair. Look at shoes nowadays. You could buy a decent pair of shoes for $40-50, or you could go and buy a real expensive pair of Nikes. They're like $250 nowadays. I remember 10 years ago when buying $100 pairs of shoes was like really expensive, but now they're up to like $250. And this is just what they have in the mall. Like you could buy some designer brand stuff that's like $1,000 and you could get real carried away with it. But in the end, what's the whole purpose of this? Is it so people notice or assume that you're rich? Is it so they assume that you're wealthy? Because I'm telling you right now, having all this nice stuff doesn't mean you're wealthy. It usually means you're in debt. I've worked with a lot of interesting people throughout the years. I've worked with people I worked with this one guy. He drove to work in this junky little car, and I didn't really know him that much, so I assumed that he didn't have much money. But when I really come to figure out who he was and get to know him, he actually had all kinds of money in the bank. He was just real frugal. He didn't like buying a lot of stuff. He didn't like wasting his money. And he's the guy that bought a $150,000 house and paid it off like in 6 years. 6 years. $150,000 house. And he drove a little car, not because he cared about what anybody thought about him, because he had tons of money in the bank. He's frugal. He knew how to manage his money. He's smart. But then there's guys I see drive to work in nice old big trucks and everything like that, and have the latest phones, the nicest clothes and everything, and they're living from paycheck to paycheck. And I'm not saying you guys can't buy nice things. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to say, get your finances in order. Get everything straightened out. Understand the differences between liabilities and assets, and stop living from paycheck to paycheck. No one wants you to live from paycheck to paycheck. I'm telling you, it's not good. And if you ever get laid off or anything, or say like your hot water heater goes out in your house and you're living from paycheck to paycheck, you're going to stress out because you're going to be like, oh man, I ain't got the money. You get me stressing out, losing sleep and stuff like that, where if that same situation happened to a person that doesn't live from paycheck to paycheck, he's like, well, no big deal, I'll get it taken care of. And it doesn't really stress him out that much because he has money saved up. You know, he buys assets, money's coming in, not that much money's coming out. So, you know, and I look at different families, the way they live, the way they act, and I pay attention to what's really going on. Usually a lot of poor families, like I grew up poor, I didn't have much growing up, and you guys could listen to my testimony. We struggled, you know. My mom, she was addicted to gambling, and you know, back then we used to celebrate Christmas like most people do. And some Christmases were really good, depending on if she won bingo. And if she didn't win bingo and she's behind on bills, we wouldn't have a Christmas. And that's just what it was. I didn't have all kinds of nice clothes to go to school. Like, there was even times when I had to work with my uncles just to save up money to buy my own school clothes. So I know the struggle. I really do know the struggle, you guys. It's not like I'm coming from somewhere where I don't know the struggle. But you really need to understand assets and liabilities and really pay attention to what's going on so you can change your own life, because no one's going to change your life except yourself. A lot of poor people just rely on, oh, maybe one day I'll win the lottery and everything will be peaches and cream. Well, most likely that lottery is not going to come around. Hardly anybody wins it. And if you pay attention to the studies behind the lottery, most of the people that win that lottery end up having a worse life after they win the lottery than what they had before, for the simple fact that they don't know how to manage their finances. They don't know nothing about liabilities and assets or nothing like that. So they just go out and buy a whole bunch of junk and get in debt, have to file for bankruptcy, get on drugs. It's just a mess. So have you ever heard of the phrase, teach a man how to, if you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. But if you teach a man how to fish, you'll feed him for life. And that's something that has always stuck with me. And that's why I'm always pushing, you know, like people ask me to borrow money, you know, here and there, because they know, I dug myself out of the pit, I'm trying to do something good with my life. So like certain friends and family members will ask me to borrow money. And I'm just like, I'm trying to teach them like how to make money and how to manage money so they don't have to rely on banks and other people to borrow money from all the time. And I'm not a bank, I'm not here to lend everybody money. I'm out here, trying to support my family and everything else myself. So I'm just not out here just giving free handouts to everybody. But that's the thing, if I lend them, say they're asking for $1,000, if I lend them $1,000, they're gonna blow it up or whatever, and hopefully they'll pay me back, and if they don't, they don't. That's the risk you take. But that lines up clearly with giving a man a fish a day, you feed him for a day. But if you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for life. So you got to teach him how to manage your finances. And not everybody's open to this. You would be surprised, because you try to tell people, teach them about money, teach them about investing, stuff like that. Most of them, they don't even want to hear it. Or they listen, yeah, and they take no action. They're afraid. Where in the past, like, I looked up to people who had like expensive, nice houses, had things, had rental properties. I looked up to them, and whatever they taught me about finances and real estate and investing, I listened, because I was like, I want to learn all this stuff, because I know if I learn what they know, then I could do what they're doing. And that's the way I looked at things. And so that's what I really want to push to you guys today. Just don't look at people just because they're driving all these nice cars and everything, that they have a lot of money, Some of these people are rich, and some of these people are in debt up to their eyeballs and living from paycheck to paycheck just because they're trying to live like the Joneses. When what's the point behind it all? You really need to learn the difference between assets and liabilities and start buying assets. But the only way you can learn is you got to research it. You got to, buy that book if you want down below, it's on Kindle format for like $5, read it. read it. It'll help you out. I'm serious. So that's all I want to drop to you guys today. But stay tuned. Go ahead and hit the bell icon if you haven't. Subscribe. Like I'm saying, I'm talking a lot about my testimony, and I got a lot of other things I'm talking about. So just stick with me, and I'll see you guys on the next one.